was so severe that they just kept giving me these heavy drugs. So I ended up in like a fog, not able to function. I started taking the kratom as a tea and I started to feel a little better, got rid of the pain. My mind was definitely clear. I want us to talk to our legislators so they can promote policies that promote pure and safe kratom.
Go to protectkratom.org to tell your elected official to protect kratom.
There we go. It's a little slow.
Okay.
But, oh boy, that's really loud. There we go. Alright.
Welcome to Canna-Talk.
Yeah, welcome to Canna-Heads. It's Canna-Heads. Canna-Talk is Greg's thing. Yeah.
Whatever.
Welcome to Canna-Heads, episode 7, the new generation of it. Your once-a-week podcast for the latest in cannabis, local, and national news every Sunday at around 7:30 p.m. We made it on time this time. Typically, we go for about an hour to an hour and a half. And my name is Phil.
I'm Anthony, and happy.
Right?
I don't know why.
Yeah, so welcome back to the show, everybody. We have background music now because we're classical people. Oh, not classical. We're cool people. I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, for that, it's chill hop is the name of the brand, the name of the genre. So if you guys kind of like that kind of music, just look up on YouTube. There's a lot of it. But it's just nice for background music. So Hopefully it doesn't get annoying. If it does, probably not gonna happen again, but I'll see. It's a new thing. But yeah,
Annoying
welcome to the show.
Not for us. I can't hear it. So whatever.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and it's on the lower end, and it like levels it out based on our talking, so it's not like it's gonna be too loud over us. But yeah, a couple of like house cleaning things. Check out the new Canna-Heads or Canna-ND episode, Canna-Talk ND. Wow, Canna-Talk ND episode from on Saturday that got posted. There's a little bit of stuff we're gonna kind of cover, just a little bit of it, just kind of my input on it. But which doesn't really matter too much, but whatever. Other than that, we have the election stream that's coming up on election night, which will be a longer form stream, but it'll be basically like hanging out, looking at people's numbers that are posting. Exit poll numbers will be up there. We'll be doing all that. So that's next month, obviously. But if you haven't voted yet, make sure to, if you haven't done the mail-in voting, make sure to do that. If you are planning on voting on election night, make sure to have your ID ready. There's no registration in North Dakota, but make sure you have your ID and it's in like good shape. That's my job for tomorrow for me. So that's my thing. But basically, just be ready to vote when you go vote. If you guys have HBO, there was a show that was really, really popular in my opinion, and I really liked it. And it was called The West Wing. So they did a reunion episode, and obviously it wasn't like a full-on episode, it was like a play, which was really cool. But it was really good. They talked a lot about the fake news shit about voting. So it has a lot of information in that as well. So if you have questions about that, go check out HBO. You can get a free 7-day trial. So if you don't have HBO, you just have to have an email address that you haven't used with HBO before. I'm not saying that you should definitely just continue making trial accounts, but you can definitely do that. Because that is definitely what I did. Well, that was another thing. I couldn't find it on, like, the legitimate streaming websites that I definitely do not condone. Yeah, it wasn't on any torrent sites, and I was, like, super disappointed, so I actually had to make an account. But also on Prime Day, I don't know if HBO was on it, but on Prime Day you could get 2 months for $2 of the premium cable channels. So we got that as well. But yeah, if you like these kinds of newsy type shows, check out KRFF Radio Free Fargo 95.9 on Thursdays, not Saturdays. On Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. with Greg Wilson. The episode goes live on the podcasting platforms that night, a couple hours after, and the video format of it will be up on Saturdays. From the looks of it, it looks like it's a pretty popular thing on podcasting platforms, so that is definitely a huge sigh of relief for me, because I didn't know if I was just kind of wasting my time getting it up there. But it seems to be actually doing really well. And as far as the Canna-Heads episodes, when I said that it was going to be up that night, I totally forgot that I actually have to do that. You have to set up a whole new thing, whole new account, and go through the verification and basically get the all clear from the different podcasting platforms. So like when we did the Canna-Talk episodes, it actually took about 2 weeks to do that. And actually the biggest holdout was Apple, surprisingly, because Spotify is actually the one that's kind of anal. If you've seen Joe Rogan, even though Joe Rogan has said that he hasn't been talked to, there's a lot of drama surrounding that, and yeah, Spotify is usually the one that's like family-friendly type of thing, but like if you've seen half the shit on Spotify, half the podcasting stuff, it's basically when it gets really, really popular is when you're pretty much at risk of possibly getting taken off of there. So I'm just kind of more waiting for Joe Rogan's thing to clear up before I go through the verification with Spotify and Apple. But Canna-Talk is fine, just because it's talking about North Dakota stuff, and it's branched out into national news, so we would be okay. But yeah, it's 2 accounts, and yeah. Long story short, it will be up there. It just might take a couple weeks. Other than that,
Yeah.
huh?
I'm just talking shit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
so
cat's being obnoxious.
yeah. Other than that, couple of stories. Wasn't too much stuff. A lot of it is obviously the political election stuff. And there's some states that have the marijuana stuff, and yeah, that's going to be on the election night. It's not going to be like, it's another thing. We're not going to be talking about like the presidential election outcomes. We might like mention it, but it's mostly, and its actually main priority and focus is about cannabis. So, if you're looking to find out who the winner of the presidential election is on election night, you're not going to find it, but definitely not. We'll talk about it, but it's not going to be like...
It's not going to be our priority or focus.
Yeah. So, these were like the things that we'll be most focused on actually as well. Montana right now is kind of going through a thing. In Montana, there is a measure...
Is not what you're wanting to show.
Oh. Why is that showing? Well, at least my stream key is not on there.
Yeah.
Why is it? Oh. Whoopsies. 1 minute. And there we go. Yeah, so, Montana. That is another thing that I need to do. I'm sorry.
Cat hair.
This one is going to be that one. Okay. Oh, cat. There we go. Okay. So, Montana has a measure that's being voted on currently. It would establish a legal cannabis market for adults in the state, with a separate constitutional amendment that would also be that's also on the ballot, that would make it so that only 21 or older. So basically, this one sets up the legal framework, and then the constitutional one is the one that, so both kind of have to pass, but one or the other can still pass. They're talking about the law, like the Century Code, and North Dakota would be what we would say, but in their states, their state laws rather than the constitutional. There's a group that was very, very not vocal at all when it first got onto the ballot, and they called themselves Wrong for Montana, because that is probably the most innovative and most well thought out group name I think I've ever heard. But they are arguing that it violates state laws by including provisions that would appropriate funds to specific programs. So basically, their constitution says that that citizens may enact laws by initiative on all matters except appropriations of money and local or special laws. So they're talking about the money, like where the money is supposed to go is against the state constitution as far as the measure. And it's basically under the law, half the public revenue that would come from cannabis sales would go towards environmental conservation programs, and the other half aims to send funds towards veteran services, substance misuse treatment, healthcare, and local governments, with the rest of it being pegged to the general fund, which that's kind of how most states do this. it said that it would generate $236 million in new revenue over the next 6 years, and would also expand across to medical marijuana for patients, including veterans, and would also stop wasting law enforcement time and resources for arresting people for possession. And it's weird because you would think that, oh, this can't be the first time a initiative had some sort of framework for where money would go. And in 2018, there was a ballot measure that would have made that was rejected. It lost, but would have increased tobacco taxes and used revenue to fund health programs. But it was that there was an opponent to the legislation sent a letter to the Secretary of State saying it's unconstitutional, and the Secretary of State said that he would not be removing it, and this wasn't in courts, but this was another instance where something like this happened and it was fine. But yeah, this is a kind of a big stepping stone for them. The thing is they haven't actually filed anything in court. They're just kind of threatening to file it in court. These New Approach Montana, which is the one that's running this campaign, these initiatives were filed in January and have been vetted and approved by the Attorney General, and they are well written and closely follow existing Montana law, is what they're saying. They've also apparently wrong for Montana has been they go on to say that the opposition campaign has been spreading misinformation across Montana for weeks, and this lawsuit is basically the final chapter, is what they're saying. However, if this, I would say it's a hurdle, because first of all, they haven't filed it. They have a lawyer apparently that they're willing to go with. They're working on a case. But when you file a lawsuit such as this, you kind of have to find case law that backs it up. And from the looks of it, based on that tobacco legislation, wouldn't be legislation, the tobacco measure not being struck down, while it didn't go to courts, the Secretary of State would be basing his decision in this case based on old case laws. So old cases where something like this has happened, that would be the first guiding principle for where he would say yes or no to it. And obviously in 2018, that was tested. Secretary of State didn't go on to, have to go to court or anything like that, but he must have had to look there in the first place. So it's not as bad as it seems, but it is. If this is true, this is a pretty big hurdle, but they go on to say that based on their latest polling, that 49% of respondents in a survey released this week said that they support the policy, with 39% saying opposed and 10% saying that they're undecided. So that's this is a pretty big hurdle, but I guess we're going to find out. But it's already on the ballot, so it's not like they can say, this can't be on the ballot, because it's already there. So what would end up happening is if their case is lost, they just wouldn't count the votes for that. So that's kind of a big deal. But on the top of that, they still also do have a Supreme Court, or why am I saying Supreme? They would have a constitutional amendment as well, which would be the one that would stipulate that 21 or older. So in the end, it doesn't really, the outcome is legalized, no matter whatever happens here. What would end up happening next is during the next legislative session in Montana, the framework would be set up to their situation, if there is no statutory law for it. So at the end of the day, it's not a complete and utter loss, but it is a pretty major hurdle. So, yeah. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say that they have a case or they don't have a case, just based on one reporting of this, but it doesn't seem like they have a case strong enough that was something that the Secretary of State and the Attorney General had to look through, and they found that it wasn't against that law. So that's a pretty strong indicator that this might be bullshit. But yeah, they basically go on to say that we're going to file it. Just you wait. Yeah. So whether or not they actually file it or not is another thing. This actually also happens a lot with citizen-led initiatives. Something can go through, get voted in, and the best way to stop something like this from happening would be to sue right at election night or like shortly after. Just kind of let them possibly dig a hole for themselves based on their messaging and everything that they've said. And then when you file, be like, well, this is what they said back then, so you've basically given them ammunition. And that's basically all law, is giving people ammunition. So yeah, and hey Doug, I don't know if I've, yeah, hey, how's it going? So yeah, the next part is, let's go into Biden. So on Thursday, we had the town hall. This was supposed to be a debate, turned into a town hall on competing networks. It was basically very childish how all that came out. Trump was on NBC and Biden was on ABC. We're not going to cover the NBC part because there really wasn't much to be said there. There wasn't really any questions or answers that really goes from any of the messaging that was on before. There was a lot of questions and answers in Biden's. I think it was probably the best handled town hall, I guess. I'm kind of looking forward to the debate on Thursday. And while I really wish that I could actually stream it and like commentate over it, and it's a possibility that I could, but I work basically right when it starts. So like right when it starts is when I get off work, and I don't really have time to prepare. And I usually like to be prepared. So unfortunately I won't be streaming those, but look out for it on Thursday. It's going to be kind of interesting. Hopefully it still stands. It's also a matter of what ends up happening during the week. But Biden had talked about marijuana decriminalization, and there wasn't too much that he changed from what he had said before, but it was kind of nice to see it come out of his mouth and him say it. So that's kind of what I am going to do here once I scoot it over. Oh,
Okay.
are you at the watch together?
I will do that right now.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're all good.
Helping the wife lady with cooking suppers.
Yeah, it's usually what I end up having to do right after. It sucks, but all right.
Normally
so...
we would just wait, but we have a kid.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, so this was basically him talking. I just clipped this one part, short clip, but commentating over it. So yeah, let's do this.
Trump last time.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot I needed to turn on the... Oh, I do have it on. Okay. I was prepared, I promise. Go Max. You go Max. There we go.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Nice to meet you. What's your view on the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities? Where do you...
So the crime bill, by the way, was basically, he goes on to explain this later, but essentially it was talking about the mandatory minimums for sentences, and it was also, I think it was the one that made it so that crack and cocaine are charged the same and not separately like it used to be. Mm-hmm. Crack and cocaine are the exact same thing, just with some baking soda and cooked. That's basically what makes crack. But there was a lot of bullshit that came out of that. And he did get a lot of flack. He did say some really, really racy, shady shit. But he'll go on to explain this a little bit more. But yeah, let's go on with that.
You stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill, when it voted, the Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And it didn't. The crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for two things. It had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill. But it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it. The assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems.
And what we kind of just saw at first, we said that, a lot of stuff has changed. I think is very, very important that we actually mention or notice that things in life change based on other developments of that thing. So at one point, you might be against a certain thing, and then you realize how much pain and suffering and how much issues that can come out of that one decision, and you may have not noticed them when it happened, that you learn from your mistakes and learn from your decisions. That is huge, and that is the reason why saying that is very important. Things change in life. People learn from mistakes and their decisions, and that is a good thing to see in someone. So while a lot of people nail him for his crime bill or his view on African Americans back in the day, things have changed since. You get canceled on Twitter for saying just absolutely nothing, and you can get canceled on it. So that type of thing because back in the day, if you said something stupid on Twitter, you just said something stupid on Twitter. Now, you get your job called for saying something stupid. You lose your job, you lose your kids. It's like cancel culture in just general, but what I'm saying is things have changed since 1988, I think is what he said. Let's see, what was Biden's crime bill?
Google.
Right. Racist legacy of the crime bill, yeah. So 1994. This was in 1994. It was called the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. It had a lot of provisions to it, but federal assault weapons banned, death penalty, elimination of higher education for inmates. Like, these are things that, like, if somebody was for something like this today, would probably be a very, very spicy take. Like, it not having higher education in jails and prisons, there's a lot of information to say that that's a good thing. But back then, there might have not been. This is 1994. This is when we viewed... this is when people viewed felonies and misdemeanors as a huge event. Nowadays, in 2020 right now, people that I would have never thought to ever be, like, committing heinous crimes, including myself, after having to go through it and everything, they give out felonies like it's candy. And this is federally and on the state level, in Minnesota at least. In Minnesota, there was basically, you could be crossing the street wrong and they could find a reason to make it a felony. Like, this is the thing. They would say, oh, you're drunk or whatever. Long story short is, felonies were less common in 1994, and they became way more common now. So elimination of higher education would be something like, why the fuck would you be for that? Violence Against Women's Act, Driver's Privacy Protection Act. Basically, it had a lot of provisions to it that nowadays wouldn't fly. But let's go on to hear what else he has to say about it.
And you have 93 out of every 100 people in jail now is in a state prison, not in a federal prison, because they built more prisons. I also wrote into that bill a thing called drug courts. I don't believe anybody should be going to jail for drug use. They should be going into mandatory rehabilitation. We should be building rehab centers to have these people housed. We should wipe out, we should decriminalize marijuana, wipe out the record so you can actually say in honesty, have you ever been arrested for anything? You can say no, because we're going to.
And by the way, that checkbox right there, first of all, you can't lie on that. That's against the law. While it might not be like super heavily, you don't really go to jail for that, but you also can lose your job for that is basically what usually happens. But the fact of having to check that box is like pretty bad for people with felonies. You have to think, essentially, when you go to like prison or jail, this is a thing that changes your life dramatically. Probation or parole, you have to follow with those. Usually, yeah, you have the addiction treatment somewhere in there, whether it's outpatient or inpatient, depending on the drugs. And it also, even if it's not a drug crime, if drugs were any way involved in it, you usually have that as well. So these types of things would be good. And obviously there's a lot of people who are against it, and I'm not trying to tell anybody which way to think, but the fact that he is willing to understand, like, hey, this thing in 1994 that I was for, didn't really work out so well. It didn't really come out too well. And that's a good thing that somebody can say that out loud. While the other side would say that, oh, this was Obama's fault, or this was the Dems' fault. Just find a fall guy. The fact that you don't take responsibility for a view that you had, and just blame it on the other side, and basically go with that as your only way, and or throw lies until people forget about it. That's not the best way to go about a view that wasn't right, essentially. Mm-hmm. And the fact of state prisons and federal prisons, federal prison has its ups and downs as far as the differences between state, but when it comes to state prisons, it's kind of out there as far as which prison you go to. So in Minnesota, for instance, I went to Faribault. Faribault is a very nice place. It's not like what you see in movies, but then there's also Stillwater, which I had to go through once. And Stillwater was basically like the high level of bullshit in it. It was basically mostly run by inmates. There's administration there, but essentially they're kind of picking sides. That's Stillwater for you. There's also St. Cloud that you go through as well. Long story short is, it's not that state prisons are worse than federal prisons, because the same thing does happen in federal prisons, but it's the different variations of the prisons based on the level of severity of the inmate. So like if you are a highly violent person, you get into a fight right when you're in pre-class or something like that, you'll end up going to high level detention, where you're just kind of more locked down. Whereas if you just keep your head down and move on, you end up going to a low level. There is no set guidelines. It's set by state by state by state. And the fact that they built more state prisons means that there is a lot more guidelines to qualify somebody for different levels of incarceration, basically. So
going to pass a law saying there is no background that you have to reveal relative to the use of marijuana. And so there's a lot of things, but in addition to that, we got to change the system. I joined with a group of people in the House to provide for changing the system from punishment to rehabilitation. Along with a guy named Arlen Specter, who you may remember, I wrote the Second Chance Act.
But in the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly
time.
right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's the
See, he admits that it was his thing. And admitting your faults and admitting your mistakes is probably the most presidential thing, if that's a technical term. It's the most presidential and political type of statement that you can make that actually has a lot of weight. Because a lot of shit that you hear from political influencers and alike is just a lot of fluff to get through the issue. And this, he said twice now that, hey, this was a mistake.
The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally. What we did federally, we said it was, and you remember, George, it was all about the same time for the same crime. What I had done as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, took the 10 circuit courts of appeals, took some really brilliant lawyers working for me in judiciary. We did a study. And we determined what happens if, for the first, second, third offense, for any crime in the criminal justice system, at the federal level, if you're a black man, it's the first time you committed robbery. How long would you go to jail on average? If you're a white man, how long? Black man would go to jail on average 13 years. White man, 2 years.
That's a huge disparity.
Yes, it is.
And it's not a good thing. But the fact that there's actual hard research regarding it that was actually being used for a bill and a measure, or for a bill, is a good sign, because a lot of it is based on lobbyists. They say, oh, well, I'm a professional in my industry, and this is our problem, and here's some research to say that it is our problem. This is basically looking at it impartially, especially through courts, where there are impartial judges in the situations, that you can actually see some real statistics rather than ones that are skewed one way or the other. And yeah, 13 to 2 years, that's huge.
I go down the list of every single crime. So we set up a sentencing commission. We didn't set the time. Every single solitary maximum was reduced in there. But what happened was it became the same time for the same crime. So it said you have to serve between 1 and 3 years. It ended up becoming much lower. Black folks went to jail a lot less than they would have before, but it was a mistake.
So, again, third time saying it was a mistake, but the fact that
You're playing the ad right now.
No? Huh? Oh, in YouTube world?
Oh, it started playing, the sync tube started playing a random ass video. Sorry about that.
Oh.
That was on my end.
Oh yeah, I have another ad too. Well, it's an ad, but it's related to our thing. But yeah, the fact that he admitted that it was a mistake, he's said it multiple times, and the fact that he's looked over and said, you know, we did fix some stuff, but we did make some mistakes. I don't think there is ever any kind of issue that anyone can look at that fixes all of the problems and doesn't create any mistakes, doesn't create any, you know, doesn't really go bias in one way or another, because at some point somebody's going to get their grubby little fucking hands inside and say, no, this is going to affect me and my industry personally. You can't be doing that. And that's how that kind of shit happens. Sentencing guidelines, I really, really hope for a future where we don't have mandatory minimums. It opens it up to the misuse of overcharging people. It opens it up to the people who end up getting a very generic, because the laws and the charges are quite generic. They're not like based on your specific charge. It's basically like, okay, you had drugs and you weren't selling it, so 5th degree. Oh, but you had oxycodone, it's 4th degree now. Or, you had multiple different kinds of drugs, it's 3rd degree. These types of situations are set in such a way of, if you have 1 oxycodone, you would end up in 4th degree. So you would be just as bad as somebody with 30. And it's based on, because that it's not like per pill, or else you end up with 30 charges of 4th degree, which is insane. That type of mandatory minimum situation there is not that great. The fact that it was a range, 1 to 3 years, and so on and so forth, was pretty useful in that situation, but at the same time, it should be up to the judge's discretion. It should never be up to the prosecutor's discretion, which it usually ends up being. You get a lot of situations where they will have, well, most people who go to court, if you ever go to have a charge and you end up having to go to court, it's not how you see in movies. It's a plea agreement 99.9% of the time, because you're usually facing like a scary number. So essentially, 4th degree, for instance, I think the mandatory minimum was 5 years. So if you actually go to trial and you lose, the judge is forced to give you 5 years without any kind of insight into the specific circumstances of your case. That is the reason why mandatory minimums aren't great. Most people will end up in a plea agreement where they'll say, you'll accept this charge, but we will ask the judge, and this is where it turns into the judge's discretion doesn't really matter. It's the prosecutor kind of saying, this is what you should do, judge, of the 90 days or 180 days for your sentence in incarceration, and then this many years in probation, and so on and so forth. It's before you hit trial. You end up going through, in most cases, your first plea agreement is the worst. Your second plea agreement, depending on the prosecutor, if you end up having to go to jail and you're most likely going to plea out, definitely ask people around about their prosecutor. In most cases, like in North Dakota, for instance, there's usually only 1 or 2 in the county. So you end up basically being able to figure out like if your first one is going to be bad, if your second one's going to be bad. But 99.9% of the time, once you hit the third one, it's probably your sweetheart deal. Anything over 3 is usually bad. You end up having an actual case. So if a prosecutor's all of a sudden, giving you a sweetheart deal on your first one, there's a chance that you have a case. Obviously, talk to your lawyer. Don't take everything I say to heart. But these types of disparities, these types of plea agreements in just general, are the reason why mandatory minimums don't work. That's the reason why. That's basically a prosecutor saying this mandatory minimum thing is not working out, and we don't want to see you go to prison for 5 years because that's expensive to taxpayers. But at the same time, they're saying, well, you have to end up serving time for this, and that's usually where you get like the 180 days on a 4th degree possession. Mine was a year on a 4th degree, and I had a choice between a year and a day and a year. I went the year and a day. I thought I could go for the year, but I didn't want to go on probation for like 5 years. So I executed. But obviously talk to your lawyer and everything like that. But talk to people about, if you're looking at charges, the prosecutor. Because that's kind of what we'll figure out how he acts. For instance, my prosecutor, quite literally, so I ended up having an overdose. Long story short, I ended up going to court like the next day, And the guy had the gall to say, like, I'm a danger to the public, to which point a bunch of people started laughing, but also my lawyer and the judge ended up starting laughing, because this is a way crazy, blown out of proportion sentence to say, or statement to say. So if you know, like, your prosecutor is fucking insane and just absolutely just goes ham on anyone and everyone, you usually can tell, like, hey, this is gonna be a really bad plea agreement, but maybe the next one. Prosecutors also do not like going to court when it comes to go to trial, because O.J. Simpson is a thing that happened, where, you know, they tried to plea him out, he wouldn't want to plea out, and he ended up, because the prosecutor thought that he was actually guilty, he ended up going to court and not guilty. This is a thing that actually happens quite often. Not as often as it should be, but yeah. So on the point of mandatory minimums and just crime in general, another thing that is really interesting that's been going on is in Oregon. There's a measure, it's called Measure 110. It would be the first state to completely decriminalize drug use. So it would decriminalize the personal possession of small amounts of illicit drugs, including cocaine, heroin, oxycodone, methamphetamine, and it also reduces the penalties for possessing larger amounts. It funds the health assessment and addiction treatment, harm reduction, and other services for people with addiction disorders by reallocating cannabis tax dollars. So they're legalized in the state. By reallocating the tax dollars and savings from law enforcement, making fewer drug arrests. So essentially, they cut the whole drug arrest situation to being able to fund for treatment. It also it was funded by the Drug Policy Alliance, which is New York advocacy group, and it was backed by the Oregon legalization of recreational cannabis people in 2014. They had basically spent about $3.5 million on signature gathering to get on the ballot. That's based on staff time and everything just in general, but one huge thing, which is weird, the Facebook guy, Zucky Boy, and his wife Priscilla donated $500,000 through their initiative for this. They were for it, for sure. It would be basically considered a civil violation, similar to a traffic offense. You can get a $100 fine, but without the penalty of jail time. They can avoid the fine by going through a Rule 25 or a health assessment, and possession of larger amounts of drugs, for example, 40 or more oxycodones, or 2 grams or more of cocaine, methamphetamine, or heroin, while it's currently a felony, would be reduced down to a misdemeanor. So you would still get a misdemeanor, but it wouldn't be a felony, essentially. It can become a felony based on 11 factors, which is the factors of commercial drug offense or sale, to charge someone in possession of drugs with a felony, such as having stolen property or weapons, indications of a person is selling drugs, and like having $300 or more of cash, or a cell phone full of people being like, yo, can I pick up? Stuff like that. But so it doesn't basically make drug dealing illegal, is what I'm trying to say. It would also take some of the tax revenue from cannabis that would be normally allocated to schools and other programs and redirect it to a fund that would basically be used for addiction treatment. So it would allow people who need/want to get help be able to fund, you know, the stay, the actual the assessment that you have to take. All that stuff would be able to be given on a grant or a fund basis, and the measure basically will put $57 million a year adjusted for inflation into the fund, which is roughly 15% more 15% more than what is usually in that fund. So that's a pretty big up. It would reduce convictions for drug possession by close to 90%, according to an Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, from 4,057 convictions in 2019 to estimated around 378 if the measure passes. They go on to say that it's imperative that we change our culture so that people suffering from addiction aren't stigmatized and isolated, treating them as criminals. You prevent them from coming forward. They are often scared to come forward to their friends or family because they're considered second-class citizens in that case. So it's less shaming somebody for having an addiction, a mental, which is actually known by the what's the people SAMHSA as an actual mental disorder and not just a moral disorder. It keeps people from being shamed for that. And they have one ad. They're actually backed by a lot of people in the different industries. Let's see, it was there was labor unions, community organizations that work with Black Oregonians, immigrants, communities of color, including Unite Oregon Latino Network and the NAACP of Portland. It is also endorsed by the Oregon Nurses Association, the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, and the Oregon chapter of the American College of Physicians. So there's a lot of big industry leaders that are for this. They basically have a couple ads that they're running, so let's watch one of them. I'm going to watch it in full because I'm sure that you're totally fine with me running it. So,
my name is Janie Gullickson. I was addicted to drugs for over 22 years. For 5 of those years, I spent more time in county jails than I did free. Treatment was never offered. Treatment was the turning point. This ballot measure funds treatment and recovery services. It decriminalizes addiction. That saves lives.
and it really does help. Even like in the criminal justice system, seeking help is usually a pretty good sign that you're actually taking them seriously, which is one of the reasons why you don't get charged super heavily for it. The only thing that I really hope that this measure doesn't push so much as far as with the actual treatments would be Teen Challenge or religious based. It's when it comes to addiction treatment, I believe at least that there's a lot of different ways for treatment. While for some people, yeah, the religious thing can help. The religious thing works one way. For other people, a science-based approach works. It's really based on the actual individual. And I'm really hoping that one of the things that they do in the assessment for that Rule 25, for instance, is ask about somebody's religious preferences, somebody's, trust in science type of thing. If they've tried any other, if they've tried any groups, for instance, like SMART or anything like that, that it would help kind of guide them to the right treatment center. It would be kind of counterproductive if it's basically like, oh, you got a charge and now you have to go to Teen Challenge, which is basically brainwashing. So hopefully that's kind of more figured out, and I'm sure once it goes into effect, it would basically help. There's some people against, obviously, for Measure 110. The director of Oregon Recovers, Measure 110 doesn't have any goals in it. How many people are going to be actually be offered treatment? It doesn't say. That was Oregon Recovers, which is a recovery. So like the rehab people. Oregon currently has 1,427 beds available for residential treatment and 201 beds for detox facilities, according to the 2019 report by the legislator. And it's failing to add a single penny of revenue to these to those needed supporters. The measure will undermine progress in our recovery system and fails to provide a solution for Oregon's most vulnerable. The problem with that is it provides a fund for people to get treatment, which that bill that you pay is not all just for the doctor or for the entire place. It pays into basically their business, and if a business is actually trying to grow and actually trying to expand and help more people that are the most vulnerable, they can take that money, their profits, and put it back in their business, which is what most people who are trying to grow do. They might not pull all of it, but maybe the director of that rehab doesn't need a $300,000 salary. Maybe he wants to put some of it back into the business rather than pulling out or getting bonuses to everybody up on the higher end. Basically, that statement basically tells me that there's not enough money in the making of this measure. It doesn't give us enough money, so we're going to say that we care so much about people, and kind of pointing out that while it doesn't just give the rehabs money, maybe we shouldn't give rehabs money, we should actually have them earn it. That would be a thing. Opponents also point out that in 2017, Oregon did reduce the criminal penalties for drug possession. Reduce is the biggest word there. And in part to avoid having to build a new state prison. They argue that people convicted of possession today rarely have to serve time in jail. Instead, most are offered probation or supervised treatment through drug court programs, which operate in 26 of the 36 counties in Oregon, is what the DA's Association had said. The problem with that is probation is usually a long-term thing, 5-10 years, depending on the conviction. So basically, you're in jails and stuff like that. Probation is basically seen as they're putting the noose around your neck, and the PO can kick that chair underneath you whenever they fucking want. There's many different reasons that you can get violated for probation. There's many different bullshit that a probation agent can actually hit you for if they wanted to. I've known some people who, while they did have a relapse, they were allowed to continue on probation, and they tested dirty again, cannabis. They tested dirty again a couple weeks later. It takes 30 days to get out of your system, so you got a second dirty UA, and they were violated for that. Now that they challenged it, it went to actual court. It wasn't like a trial or anything, it's a judge situation. And the numbers of the metabolites went down, so it was obvious that he wasn't continuing to smoke. But that is a situation that causes a lot more problems, and not to mention, not having people go to jail is not the biggest problem that they're trying to tackle here. They're trying to basically say that, hey, I hit the wrong tab. They're trying to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat people with addictions as morally bankrupt people, or as, as criminals, because it's a medical issue, and it's not a moral issue. And that's the biggest stigma of addiction, is that most people see it as a moral issue. So basically, they want to, they go on to say the district's attorney office or association, sadly, many people only confront their substance use disorder because of a contact with law enforcement, which often ends in diversion and treatment. Your job is being a district attorney. Your job is being a prosecutor. So of course you're going to see a lot of people that are changing their lives because of law enforcement contact. So yeah, there's a lot of proponents against it, and there's a lot of people for it. This one's kind of up in the air. It's not like 100% passing. I don't know if they have any polling data. Another issue that a lot of people do have is the part where they pull money out from cannabis taxes to schools to fund rehabilitation. They go on to say that schools currently receive the largest share of the revenue, 40%, and would see the largest revenue loss, a projected $73 million reduction in 2021 to 2023. 20% of the state's marijuana tax dollars does go to mental health, alcoholism, and drug services account, and 20% goes to local governments. 15 goes to Oregon State Police, and 5 goes to the Health Authority, which would all be receiving less revenue. I mean, maybe schools are one thing. Losing a little bit of money to schools couldn't be bad, but the state's mental health and alcoholism and drugs account is getting 20%, and they might need a little bit more than 20%. And if the state police doesn't buy their military grade fucking tanks for riots for 1 year, maybe it might be worth it.
Beth and I were just discussing that. It was this morning, actually. We were just talking about how the Second Amendment was essentially written to level the playing field between a government getting out of pocket and the people that are getting their pockets ran through,
Right.
And at some point, they were allowed to start buying surplus military equipment and just rebranding it police instead of U.S. or MIL, whatever the hell was on it.
Right.
And it was like at that point, the scales were tipped to an irrevocable level or whatever.
And not only that, another big issue is in military or basically any government contracts, it's rife with overcharging people. There's been multiple cases of fraud that have come forward where people were charging $20,000 for a nail. There is that kind of overcharging. I don't know what the market price of a tank is, but if it's been used in military installations, it's getting old. There's obviously a reason why it's being sold off, and that depreciation almost never carries over into the following purchase by a police officer or by the police department. So there's overcharging going on there, and also, like you were saying, military equipment is made for large forces of people, and to basically roll a tank down, Main Street is pretty, it scares the living shit out of people. And also, is that really, what are you gonna do with a tank?
Right, I could understand, and this is where it starts blurring the lines, because I can say what I'm about to say, but then it gets taken into, but it could also be used, unless it is a SWAT, an actual SWAT unit. There's absolutely no reason, and I got one more point to this, but there's absolutely no reason why anybody but a special weapons tactical team would need anything like that. Armored vehicles and shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, nobody, I get laughed at for this, but it's blatantly true, okay? We watched all of these protests, and what nobody wanted to talk about was the majority of violent interactions that happened were initiated by police.
Yeah.
And most of them were just well, we don't want to deal with the people exercising their First Amendment right anymore, so clear them out.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And they saw it
what
as
they don't realize.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, that's the thing, the escalation. A thing about police officers and what they're supposed to be doing is in a violent situation, they're supposed to de-escalate the problem and not continue to escalate it. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think any of the protesters drove a tank.
No.
So pulling out a tank is definitely not de-escalation of the problem.
Yeah, but like the White House thing, the Lafayette Park.
Yeah.
That was what was happening with the majority, where you have these people saying, well, they're rioters. No, they're protesters, okay? They're well within their First Amendment rights, okay?
Right.
Lafayette Park, that was the majority of protests that turned into riot, where they were protesting and then police initiated the contact.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, their plan, sorry, I don't mean to keep talking over, but their plan, they were talking about, I forgot what it was called, a thing that makes your skin burn, that's never been used in riots or riot control at all. It was like a laser cannon or something.
Oh, yeah. I think they were talking about the, and it got misconstrued through the media because a lot of people don't understand what it is. It's called an LRAD.
Okay.
And what it does is it's basically a big dish, and it focuses noise in a concentrated area. And like they've been, I mean, if you ever watch like Whale Hunters, wherever the hell that shit was, or like the guys who go save the whales.
Right.
There was a whole episode where a ship had used an LRAD against them, and it was pointed at like their helicopter or whatever. And it's crazy because it can induce confusion, sensations of burning. Another one is numbness.
Yeah.
So that's what they were talking about, was an LRAD.
And another thing is a lot of like whenever somebody says like, you know, there was a raid and they used flashbangs, a lot of people don't realize that those are actually really lethal. If you really, really do it wrong, they're very lethal. They're not anything. It's not like Call of Duty.
Also, rubber bullets, they are not, oh God, this made my skin crawl because from the first time people started protesting, oh, okay, I know I'm sidetracking a bunch here. Where it started in Minnesota, the police station, how it got burned down.
All right.
I was watching the live feed of that shit. Nothing was happening. They were standing there, they were protesting, doing the fucking thing. And even Beth was watching it with me. And then I heard somebody yelling, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And then I was like, Beth, look at this. And we're watching, and there's a girl who got shot in the face. That was the initial contact that started it all. Was they were protesting, and then the police, from behind a barricade, with all of that space, standing on the roof of the police department, shot a fucking rubber bullet into some girl's face.
And that's another thing, is rubber bullets aren't, well,
that's what I was going to say.
Some of them are, but
nope, no rubber bullet is designed. Yep, every rubber bullet is designed to be shot at the ground and ricocheted into the target.
Yeah.
They're not designed to put that much energy, because the second you have a rubber bullet being shot at somebody without ricocheting, you are making it a lethal projectile.
Right,
it loses its less than lethal label.
Well, I don't know, beanbag rounds are also another thing that they used. Those are for people, though. It's not a ricochet
you can shoot
thing.
those directly at people.
Yeah,
but
that would have been a better idea.
Now, after everything we just said, and if there's anything that I want somebody to context out of any of this is, and I want somebody to prove me wrong so goddamn bad, okay? Because I am 100% Second Amendment, okay? Fully believe. I'm a very constitutionally derived person in terms of my view on the world.
Right.
Is it just me, or did police departments prove that they don't need to actually be armed? Right, like, let that marinate for a second. Like, they cleared out streets of people without firing a single bullet. So you're telling me that at a traffic stop, if somebody tries to get hostile or whatever, and the taser aren't going to do it, your pepper spray won't work, that cleared out fucking 10 people at a time. Rubber bullets. I mean, yeah, they're not designed to be shot at people, but they shot them at people and people didn't really die from it. But it still is as effective as a firearm without killing somebody. You're going to fuck them up, but you're not going to kill them. So is it just me, or did they not prove that they can use less than lethal options in the majority and save the lethality for specialized units?
That is the
and
case.
I want Ramiro.
But I would also say that it should be a last resort. Like, officers still being armed should be a thing, but it should be an absolute last resort. Like, the taser situation is a slightly better one, but in the end, any kind of force that you put onto somebody else can be lethal, but you should look at the statistics of it, whereas with a gun, it's, if you aim it at the right place, it's 100%. But a taser, I don't remember exactly where, but you could technically tase somebody and they could go into a cardiac event. Even that's not 100% lethal, but like, there's so many different weapons that they can use that are a lot better for crowd control, so riots and protests or anything like that, that they could use against anybody that's being hostile. It's a matter of training them to not go for the gun, but to go for the taser, which is usually right next to it. Like, it's just a single motion down. But yeah, you are right. They basically kind of prove their case of, you know, we use this, but we want to go pew pew instead.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, we were watching this, and it didn't even take, you know, the first week before I'm looking at this. Like, okay, so again, as somebody who does support and has firearms, I met with a lot of people saying, like, well, what about, like, you know, traffic stop, somebody pulls a gun or whatever. Okay, if that rubber bullet projectile is basically a big shotgun, you can't scale that down,
right,
to 9mm or 45 caliber or whatever.
Well, I thought it would be like because it's in a shell, isn't it? So you got the shell that when it ignites, it breaks out of the shell, right? I think that's what it is.
I honestly think they fire like normal bullets, where it's a casing and then a rubber projectile.
Let's see, rubber bullet.
Yeah.
Shell. I don't know. We'll call it a shell. Yeah. So they are bigger, but at the same time, that looks. Is this real though? That doesn't look real. That's a stock
Basically,
image.
they look just like bullets, and they fire the same way, except instead of a metal projectile, it's rubber, and there's less propellant behind the projectile, so it's not firing at a crazy high rate of speed, or like the velocity is low enough it shouldn't penetrate skin. It should just knock the shit out of you.
But they don't have it in a 9mm.
But and see, that's what I was just asking. Was like, okay, if you can have a fucking, say, 30mm wide round or however big.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
You can't scale that down to something that is in a portable, like a more portable way. So again, if somebody has a firearm, okay, and here's the other thing that people aren't thinking big picture. If you lowered the interactions, if you lowered the lethality of police, especially against communities like Black communities or Hispanic communities, if you lower the instances of those people being killed at police hands, you're going to have less interactions with people trying to shoot the police. So you take that into account, and then you also have, if somebody needs to be subdued in any way, shape, or form for any reason, including having a gun, you can still knock somebody in the fucking head with a rubber bullet, and they're going to think twice about what they're doing. Or give yourself a minute to get some space to actually get a more lethal option.
Right, yeah. They do actually make it in the
99
or in 9mm.
Good. But I do not believe that the lethal option should be on the person unless they're basically, if you're in a car conducting business, such as like traffic stops and whatever, I
Right.
don't think that you should have lethal options.
Yeah.
Unless you, and like if you're patrolling or whatever, again, rubber bullets work just as well. Unless you're going into a hostile situation, such as taking somebody
Right.
that
Yeah,
is
like a
known to
SWAT
be-
type situation.
And that's the thing, is it breaks down to specialized tactical units should be the ones that should be called in for the lethal.
Yeah. All right. So, you ready for Luke Simmons?
I have no idea who this is. Educate me.
All right. Luke Simmons. So this is a thing that's been circulating around. Let's see here. This one's all right. So this image has been circulating around the last couple of hours. And yeah. So basically, Luke Simmons is District 36, so by Dickinson. And this was his first term. He's up for re-election this election, and he's running Republican. He's sponsored a bunch of bills. A thing about him that a lot of people have noticed with his comments and statements is he is a huge gun nut, which is, live by Dickinson, which is kind of like farmy type area. It's North Dakota just in general is farmy type area, but I'm just saying like more where guns are common on farms and stuff like that. So yeah, Luke Simmons is the owner or part owner of a barbershop called the Gentleman's Barbershop in Dickinson, and he is, while there's no way to verify that he runs the Facebook page, which I had saved up, which I don't anymore, so let me do that. But basically, this image right here has been circulating. Somebody had taken a screenshot, and I think it would be pretty important to actually show what their Facebook page usually is. So let's do that. So this is what their Facebook page looks like. Shoot. There. So this is their Facebook page. And a lot of their things that they post up are kind of memes, like free ammo. Basically, a lot of their posts, what I would justify as, are memes that they find on Instagram and motivational trash. Things like this, be patient with me, I'm somewhere between losing my mind and finding my soul. Essentially, that's not what I wanted. Essentially, they find these things on Instagram, they slap their Gentleman's barbershop image on it, and repost it as their thing. This is definitely not the correct way to do social media influencing or advertising, but go right ahead. This post circulating, and he actually did confirm that it was a meme that is posted on my barbershop page, which has a lot of awesome memes. Thank you, Mr. Port, for bringing this to my attention and correcting the record. This kind of was circulating around. Rob Port apparently got involved. I don't know. Long story short, what I've understood it to be, this post actually came from this Reddit thread. And this is from a subreddit called Shit Americans Say. This is a kind of a satire type of thing where it's just like insane shit that's been said. And it's a sign that says, "No mask, please. This is a gun shop. We shoot people with masks. Just saying." So yeah, there's that kind of a stance. This one, as you can see, is in a lot better shape of an image. And the reason why they change this and add this is because they think A, it's artistic, and B, it's a little bit easier to not not get caught with copyright. Yeah, I don't think anybody copyrights memes, but I've gotten copyright hits for meme videos.
Could you imagine what the internet would look like if all of a sudden people started claiming copyrights for memes?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I claim, like, if somebody, first of all, let me just put it this way: if anybody ever copies this and they do it in such a way that is totally not what is it? Transformative. Wow, can't say transformative nature. Yeah, I will DMCA you 100%. Especially if you mark it as your own. If it's just like a re-upload, whatever. But if it's like, this is my video, no, 100%. But yeah, basically what I've understood it is they've basically been taking memes from Facebook and from Instagram and Reddit or whatever, reposting as their own because that's how they think that social media advertising works. He claims that that it was never, so the question that literally nobody ever asked was this on your door? The reason why nobody asked this question is because it says this is a gun shop. Well, we're talking about a barber shop. Unless there's a gun shop inside of a barber shop, which that would be a very interesting store to go to. I do gotta say. It'll be interesting, but I'm just saying that nobody asked that question. It was not on your door. You later go on to say that it was, a meme that you posted, and it's from a satire place. So essentially you have this position of, if you wear a mask, we shoot you, type of thing. Like, people who wear a mask are terrible and are less people and we should shoot them. That is the problem. Nobody is asking if you've actually put it up on your window. You go on to then write a sign. Attention, our freedom does not end where your fear begins. If you are scared, stay at home. If you are afraid to be within 6 feet of another person, do not enter this buzziness. I don't know what buzzinesses are. I really hope that one day we can learn what a buzziness is. But, goes on to say, God bless America, land of the free, in quotes, and home of the brave. So basically, this is kind of what we know about it. A thing that he seems to not be understanding is it's not the fact that you didn't put it on your store. You did, in a way. Mm-hmm. You posted it on your business Facebook page. A post is a post, no matter where it is. If you're showing it to the public as your view or your stance, especially if you're an elected official who should probably play by political optics, if you haven't learned what optics are yet, you've had 3 years to learn, and you've had an entire campaign to learn what an optic is. Look, you have the right to say whatever the fuck you want. You have the right to have whatever view you want. No problem. I do not give a shit what you think. I do not give a shit what anybody wants anybody else to think. What I do give a shit about is that you're in a position of power over people, and you find that people that are your constituents, that if they wear a mask, that you are ready to shoot them. That's the problem.
Right, and I understand it's joking, you mean it jokingly to yourself because of your stance on mask wearing or whatever.
Right.
But what impression does it give your patrons?
Exactly. And not to mention the fact of this, that's the thing. I don't know how long he's been in business, but you can have whatever view you want. But you should learn that if it's going to affect your business, your political career, or anything like that, maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't say it out loud unless you're willing to fucking defend it.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of defending it, you are turning around and saying, oh, the lying liberals are lying. They're lying. They're saying that I had this on my door. They're saying that this was on my door. Nobody is asking if it was on your door or not. It says gun shop. Unless you own a gun shop and this is what you put up on it, nobody thought that it was a gun shop. We all thought, and it's even in the fucking post, Gentleman's Barbershop in Dickinson, North Dakota. This is why North Dakota will never be smart or safe. This right here, we're talking about a barbershop. So unless this says barbershop, yeah. Also, there's a little bit of a, it's depressed obviously, but this is kind of like a Second Amendment thing. They're talking about entering a premises with a weapon. You can kind of see it a little bit better here. It's not that much better, but basically it's talking about the Second Amendment. There's the end of a thing with a bullet. This is a very obvious gun shop. You can kind of see that, well, you can't really see it that well, but you can kind of see that this is not North Dakota or what North Dakota looks like today. Yeah, nobody was asking if this was on your door. Everybody was asking if this is something that you actually believe in and you actually stand for. And that's the thing about politics. It's basically having a stance and having enough gall, having enough balls, and believing in something enough, so much so that you're willing to defend it, and the people who support that defense are the people who vote for you. That's politics. And
Can I just point out?
Go ahead.
I see it all the time on Facebook, and it is so unattractive. I see it all the fucking time, but people are like, those fucking Democrats, okay? Or like, those Republicans, you know, those dirty Democrats, or blah, blah, blah. Like, you look so fucking stupid when you do that. It's crazy. Like, hold people accountable, but to hold the whole group accountable, that's like me not liking, you know, somebody in a church and saying, those goddamn Christians, you know?
Yeah.
So
and it's surprising just how it's not tone deaf. Well, it is. His post is very tone deaf. It's probably the most tone deaf thing I think I've seen this election. But just how tone deaf the supporters kind of are. His entire page is a little... Oh, let's see. Obviously, there's the required vote yes on Measure 2 picture. Let me find it. Oh boy, did you delete that one too, or what? Oh, by the way, here's another thing that he does. And probably if he finds out that I am saying this about him, he likes to ban or block people on his Facebook. Yeah, that's your personal Facebook, but you also like to ban people from your campaign, your public-facing Facebook for your job in public eyes. And the fact that you're banning people from that while has never been prosecuted. A couple of suits have actually come up for Donald Trump about that, of blocking people. He used to do that. I don't think he does it anymore, but it's not cool. That's essentially what I'm saying. And while we're on this subject of blocking people, Measure 2. Let's talk about Measure 2. And this was actually in the episode before. This actually happened with Greg, actually, which is why it's very interesting. Measure 2 is got a page. Vote yes on Measure 2. And because Facebook is great in the sense of being a little bit transparent about things, they have they have two ads. Kevin Cramer, which is senator, and this one, whatever the fuck that is. But basically, you can go in here, see summary details. I'm trying to find the actual ad. I bet if I copy ad link, there we go. Maybe that's just a library of it. Oh. Used to be able to see the comments on the ads.
Some of them, yeah. But like if
Man.
there was like a prescription drug or something like that, they would only allow you to share it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that they've done is the people who ever say anything bad about it will get banned. They'll just block them from commenting. They also run through and anything that goes against vote yes, if you say vote no, they will delete quite quickly. So they have somebody actively going through here. This was a day ago, but this isn't a comment. When it comes to actually like having a stance and actually saying something, that usually gets deleted. Greg had posted, "Hey hey ho ho, vote no on measure 2" or something like that. That got deleted. They just kept on deleting him. If you are running in public, if you're in the public eye, and you have to delete your detractors' comments, you've already fucking lost the debate. And this goes for this Luke Simmons guy. If you have to delete this Luke Simmons guy, if you have to delete your detractors' comments or delete your or ban your detractors from talking to you and you're in the public eye, you obviously are saying that I don't give a shit what you think. I don't give a shit if you think that I'm wrong. You have to follow me by being on my side. If you're not for me, then I don't need it. And that is very, very dangerous to have to go down. You also see this in social media, just in general, whenever somebody gets some sort of hate or anything like that and they start blocking people. That is a very slippery slope that usually ends up fucking over the person even worse than the actual thing that started the whole entire snowball effect. That is usually you giving up. You just waving the white flag at that point. Because when you do that, you're basically saying, I don't give a shit. It's one thing to be like, this person basically follows me post to post to post to post to post and, talk shit about me and talk shit to me and has not adding to the conversation at all, any of that stuff. By going down the route of, even if it's something that you might have a point about and you're deleting that, you are basically saying that it's my way or the highway, which is not how politics works. Politics is the act of having a stance and listening to other people's stances and making a decision based on that. You have the Democrat and the Republican views and everything like that, but at the end of the day, those stances and those views are based on the actual beliefs of the entire group. They've taken input from everybody in that view to sculpt their decision and their view of that group, basically. So Republicans, they've got a whole bunch of people being like, God is good and abortion is bad or anything like that. They've taken that view and said, okay, do we all agree with this type of thing? And we'll go with that. But to be deleting people who have voted for you and for people who put trust into you and you're just deleting them for that, you're showing that you're not willing to listen to anybody and you're just going to do whatever the fuck you want to do. And this goes for measure 2 as well. The fact that you've sat there and look, I ran the other Facebook page. Just gonna go with that. There were people who called us out or who had said some stupid shit or anything like that, and guess what? We didn't delete them. We confronted them. We would say, hey, that is an interesting view. Can you tell me more? We started a conversation with people rather than, there were some people that did get deleted. There was one person that just kept on spamming. Like, just literally would just say the most insane shit just to throw a scammy link in there. But yeah, there was a lot of people that they're like, hey, you know, your page always posts memes and stuff like that. Memes are good. There's nothing wrong with memes of using it as an advertising platform, but if that is the only thing you do on Facebook and that is the only thing that you do for your advertising, it's a cheap way to try to get some likes that will never turn into an actual lead, essentially. People will just follow it just so that they can see funny things. They're not following it because they actually care about the thing. They just find it funny what they post. And yeah, most of those people, like, hey, they have that view, and I'm like, look, I'll listen to you, you know, give me, what do you think? What? Tell me more. And a lot of people, they did help kind of shape the way that we made decisions and do. And that's probably the best way to handle that type of thing. So if measure 2 is just running literally the most repetitive advertising in the world, like the yellow and black thing, I mean, okay, that's whatever, but Kevin Kramer, this is literally the only type of spokesperson you have. Kevin Kramer. There's more than Kevin Kramer in the world, in North Dakota especially. You know, you got Rick Decker. There's that one. Hell, why don't you guys team up with Luke Simons? I'm sure he's got plenty of views that he'd love to have you repost. And yeah, it's this thing. He posted it and then also deleted it. Why did you delete it then? Because he got some flack. So you are definitely understanding of why this is a troubling view. But you're talking about it being, was never on the door of my barbershop. Well, okay, it was on the door of your Facebook page, which seems to be your primary mode of getting advertisements. So, yeah. That's that. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know, dude. That was a lot.
And this was a thing that, I mean, like, it was a short little drama, obviously, but, like, the thing that I wanted to point out is the tone deafness of it. It's fine to have a view of, like, because in the world, you can say you have the right to refuse service. It's totally your right. It's your business. It's your private business or your private land. If you like own it or if you're renting it, I think it's also still you have the right to like send people off. But totally fine. It's the fact of not understanding that view and going on to being like, let's see, what was it that you said? Wow, I have too many tabs open. Attention, our freedom doesn't end where your fear begins. Okay, it's totally fine to be like, hey, you don't have to wear a mask in here. It's totally fine if that's your view. Whatever, man. Nobody's gonna fight you on that. But to then be like, it's because you're fearful, it's because you're scared. Look, nobody is wearing a mask and liking it. Nobody is wearing a mask, and in most cases, they aren't protecting themselves. They're actually protecting other people.
And that's the whole point of it, is I get a lot. Well, you're not really saving yourself. You're not protecting yourself or whatever. And it's like, that's the whole fucking point, dude. The whole point is I cough, it stays here. Okay? You do me the same respect. Your cough stays the fuck there. We both do this. We keep our shit to ourselves. Therefore, we are preventing like unintentional or unnecessary spread.
And another thing is people act as if masks were the first time that they ever had to cover their sneeze or cough.
Right.
Quite literally. They're like, oh, that's why we've been covering it? I thought it was just because I didn't want them to see the inside of my mouth.
Right, dude, and it's like come Halloween or I mean, you have people that they do ag, and they have to wear N95 respirators. You know, the white ones have a little valve in the center or whatever, working around like grain and shit like that. But
Right.
then they'll go into a grocery store talking about how, oh, these masks make it hard for me to breathe. Like, I am watching people that for the last 4 years specifically, or especially, have done nothing but call anybody who disregards or like disagrees with them snowflakes and fragile and blah, blah, blah. And I have watched these same people cry like little fucking kids because, oh, I need to keep my germs to myself. Like, do you even understand how fucking dumb you sound?
Yeah. And that's another thing, is it's like the time that you can spend bitching about having to wear a mask, you could literally just put one on or buy one. Not to mention, I'm not saying that I'm gonna do this after this pandemic and stuff like that, but you can make yourself look pretty cool. Like if you have like one of the black, like I forgot what they're called. They're like almost like bandanas, but they're like flexible.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name though.
Like, I'm not saying like use it as a fashion accessory, but like it doesn't like take away from like you. So it's not like you should. First of all, everybody else is wearing masks, so you shouldn't feel stupid for wearing one. But like, it's not that it will obviously. It won't instantly make you ugly. Like, calm down. Just do what everybody else is doing. And you know what? That's another thing. The whole reason why mask wearing and everything like that is such a big deal is because the opposite would be another shutdown. So the people who are probably saying, I wouldn't wear a mask, I'm not going to wear a mask, blah, 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 are the same people who said, oh, it's a fucking, the government is after me because they shut down the economy or something like that. Like, you can't, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Or what is the saying?
Yeah, the saying is you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. So you want to open economies or the open businesses without restrictions and stuff like that. So then why won't you actually play ball? Like, it's a inconvenience to us all that there's a pandemic and a thing that is killing us. But there's no way to stop that right now. So why don't we all just play ball and just do what's asked of us?
Yep.
Oh. Turning Point USA?
Don't. Just don't.
Dude, Turning Point Vietnam. Okay, it's a meme. I was like, Turning Point USA just had a really, really spicy take.
All right.
But yeah, that's all I got. If you like this video, make sure to share it. Check us out on YouTube where you're watching this. This script is still from Facebook. So yeah, check us out on YouTube or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's go with that. And if you like the show and you kind of like the more newsy type stuff, check out Canna-Talk with Wilson on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. Or if you're not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you can listen Saturdays is when it goes on YouTube, but you can also listen on the podcasting platforms of your choice. Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. We'll also be kind of making it a little bit easier. I have a little link shortening thing that I'm going to use that's going to have a drop down of it, which will be like. Another thing is, by the way, if you guys want to find the YouTube channel super fast, Canna-Talk ND.com. But yeah, it'll be on YouTube Saturdays. I'm trying to keep it at the same time, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer, just depending, because I'm doing it while I'm working. But other than that, my name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And yeah, this has been Canna-Heads. We'll see you guys next week, Sunday, 7:30 p.m. And till then, listen to all the other videos that we have on here. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, comment it down below. I'm pretty much almost always on. So yeah, you'll probably be talking to me, but I think Greg also has control of the channel too, so he might comment as well. So, yeah. Other than that, I forgot to prep the outro again, so I'm gonna do that.
Nothing says awesome like a little commercial at the end.
Yeah. Oh, commercial. Yeah, let's do that one. We've been running it, and I'm going to continue running it because it's great. ProtectKratom.org. Kratom is a tea substance, plant, tree thing. And this is like a brand that I use, but it is a really, really good natural alternative to like oxycodone, hydrocodone, or anything like that. It does have a little bit of addiction potential, but the thing about this is it has been proven scientifically that it is the only opioid active substance that doesn't suppress breathing. So there is no way, if you do try, it's not a great time, but there's no way to overdose. It's healthy. It actually has been like, it's fiber. Hell,
I
yeah.
think we should definitely set off a little time one of these Sundays, and we'll really dig into that.
Yeah. And yeah, so ProtectKratom.org, it's basically the American Kratom Association. They are basically across the country, going to state to state to state, that is trying to make it illegal and actually passing legislation that would protect kratom, but at the same time protect consumers from bad kratom. It's a new industry. It's a new thing in the U.S. So it's not super known, and there's a lot of people who can take advantage of that, and they end up doing. There's a couple of famous people that do it, but ProtectKratom.org. Check them out. Again, I was supposed to be setting up the outro. Oh, fuck it. I'm just gonna go with this. Oh, it did load it. Okay. So, see you guys. Alright. Bye.
Bye.
I was in the Army for 6 years, and I sustained a bunch of injuries. The type of pain that I had was so severe that they just kept giving me these heavy drugs. So I ended up in like a fog, not able to function. I started taking the kratom as a tea, and I started to feel a little better, got rid of the pain. My mind was definitely clear. I want us to talk to our legislators so they can promote policies that promote pure and safe kratom.
Go to protectkratom.org to tell your elected official to protect kratom.